भन्दाखेरि 3.8% पनि तपाईहरुलाई मैले त्यहाँ देखाउन खोजेको कहिले भने 2010 को र 2011 को मिनिस्ट्री अफ फाइनान्स को चाहिँ सर्वेले देखायो। तर गत सालको चाहिँ के थियो भने नेपाल नेशनल प्लानिङ कमिसनले हामीले चाहिँ 5.5% को चाहिँ जीडीपी ग्रोथ रेटको एक्सपेक्टेसन थियो त्यो इयरमा। हामीले लास्ट इयरको चाहिँ मैले साउन्डमा गएर हेर्दाखेरि हामीसँग 5.5 एक्सपेक्ट गरेकोमा तपाईको 3.7 3.5 पनि भएको छैन। र यो वर्षको सिनारियो अब यदि असारमा गएर हेर्ने हो भने पुँजीगत खर्च भन्छ जसलाई फिक्स्ड एसेट जुन खर्च हुन्छ जसले जीडीपी ग्रोथ रेटलाई कन्ट्रिब्युसन गर्छ त्यो चाहिँ तपाईलाई चाहिँ भन्दाखेरि भदौ असोजसम्ममा त प्रोग्रामै पनि सुरु भएको छैन। भनेपछि त्यो सिनारियोमा कसरी बाटो बन्छ, कसरी खानेपानी बन्छ, कसरी चाहिँ त्यो चाहिँ कन्ट्रिब्युसन गर्छ र जीडीपी ग्रोथ रेट गर्ने भन्ने कुरोमा इट्स अ बिग च्यालेन्ज। र अर्को कुरो के भने रेमिटेन्सको चाहिँ तर्फबाट हेर्दाखेरि तपाईँ हामीले हेऱ्यौँ भने रेमिटेन्सको तर्फबाट हेऱ्यो भने 23% जीडीपीमा चाहिँ रेमिटेन्सले कन्ट्रिब्युसन छ। 23% जीडीपी जब रेमिटेन्सबाट कन्ट्रिब्युसन हुन्छ भने इट्स भेरी आर्टिफिसियल ग्रोथ। र अझ हामीसँग के छ भने त्यहाँ चाहिँ ग्रान्टका कुराहरू छन् र त्यसपछि गएर अरू हाम्रो जुन सिनारियोहरू छ। र अर्को मैले राख्न चाहेको के हो भने हाम्रो त्यसमा बायोमास जसलाई हामीले चाहिँ दाउरा भन्छौँ नि, दाउराबाट अहिले पनि के छ भने 60-70% मान्छेहरू चाहिँ रिलायन गरिरहेको छ। अब यो सिनारियोको जुन स्थिति छ त्यसमा अलिकति एमडी टार्गेटहरूलाई मैले चाहिँ के राख्न चाहेँ यहाँ जुन हामी 2015 मा गएर एचिभ गर्ने टार्गेटहरूमा केही पक्षहरू अलिकति राम्रो हिसाबमा छन्। र त्यसमा पनि विशेष गरी हामीले चाहिँ के भन्दाखेरि पनि हेल्थको कुरामा अलिकति एचिभमेन्टको कुराहरू छन्, एजुकेसनमा अलिकति कुराहरू छन्, अझ फुड र हङ्गरको कुराहरूमा चाहिँ इट्स अ भेरी बिङ डिफिकल्ट। र अर्को चाहिँ के भन्दाखेरि हामीसँगको एमजिडी ग्याप कति छ त, अब रिसोर्स ग्याप के हो त, एमडिजीलाई मिट गर्नलाई हामी 2015 सम्मको चाहिँ जुन क्यालकुलेसन हेऱ्यौँ भने निड एस्टिमेट रिपोर्ट जुन योजना आयोगको वेब पेजमा छ त्यसमा चाहिँ हेर्नुहुन्छ भने 4,51,000 मिलियन चाहिँ रुपिसको चाहिँ अझै ग्याप छ यदि एमडिजीलाई मिट गर्ने हो भने। हामीले रियल प्लानिङको हिसाबले मेरो लर्निङ के छ भन्दाखेरि हामी जति आदर्शका कुरा गर्छौँ रियालिटिज आर इन डिफिकल्टिज।
ओडिए र क्लाइमेट चेन्ज फाइनेन्सको डिमार्केसन अथवा डिलिनेसन कहाँनिर हिँड्नुपर्छ डाक्टर साहबको आफ्नो लर्निङको बेसिसमा यो हामीले पनि सुन्नु।
मलाई कस्तो लाग्छ भने प्रोफेसरलाई भनौँ हामी नेपाल चाहिँ कस्तो छौँ भने केही हदमा हामीले क्लाइमेट चेन्ज सेक्टरमा इन्भाइरोमेन्टल सेक्टरमा मैले सधैँ भन्ने गरेको आई रियली एप्रिसिएट द मिनिस्टर अफ इन्भाइरोमेन्ट कि र अब साइन्स एन्ड टेक्नोलोजी अहिले भयो भनौँ। किनभने क्लाइमेट चेन्ज पोलिसी हामीले ल्याउँदै त्यो कुरोको फोर्सी गरिसकेका छौँ। हिजो कृष्ण गेवाली सरले भन्नुभयो नि क्लाइमेट चेन्ज पोलिसीमा के भनेको छ भने क्लाइमेट चेन्ज फन्ड बास्केट बनाउने भन्ने कुरा छ। त्यो चाहिँ के भन्दाखेरि भने क्लाइमेट चेन्ज फन्ड बास्केट बनायौँ भने अनि मिनिस्ट्री अफ के अरे अहिले चाहिँ जस्तो फाइनेन्सको हाम्रो पाण्डेजी हुनुहुन्छ उदाहरणलाई एनबिसीमा त्यो बेलामा उहाँ र हामी सँगै बसेर पनि यो कुराहरूलाई इन्टरेक्सन गऱ्यौँ। अब के देखियो भने नेसनल प्लानिङ कमिसन र मिनिस्ट्री अफ फाइनेन्स एउटा ट्रेडिसनल एटिच्युडबाट उहाँहरूले पनि यो कुरो बुझ्नु जरुरी छ कि जस्तो ओडिएको फन्डिङलाई लगेर हामीले रिन्युअल इनर्जीको चाहिँ एसएफको ग्रान्टसँग लिङ्कअप गऱ्यौँ भने विल बी कोल्याप्स। किनभने मैले अहिले भने एडिबी र वर्ल्ड ब्याङ्कको पैसा दिने कुरोमा ट्रेडिसनल फन्डिङको चाहिँ चिजहरूलाई उनीहरूले छोडेर उसको कमलादी अफिस चल्नसँग मात्रै सवाल हुने हो भने त उसले टिए पाइहालेको छ, 10 जनाले जाहिर खाइरहेको छ नि, हि इज ह्याप्पी। तर मैले देखेको प्रोफेसर साहबले भन्नुभएको कुरोमा के लाग्छ भने अब क्लाइमेट चेन्ज फन्ड हामीले बनाउनुपर्छ। त्यसमा क्लाइमेटसँगको लिङ्कअप भएको पैसालाई हामीले हाम्रो हिसाबले चाहे त्यो एडाप्टेसन फन्ड होस् चाहे त्यो एलडिसीको फन्ड होस् त्यो हामीले ल्याउनु जरुरी छ। र त्यसमा पनि एउटा कुरो के हो भने एलडिसी कन्ट्री भएर जस्तो अब प्रकाश सर अथवा जसले एलडिसीको भनौँ न क्लाइमेट चेन्जमा नेगोसिएसनमा चेयर गर्दै हुनुहुन्छ हाम्रो मेन स्ट्यान्ड पोइन्ट मलाई के लाग्छ भन्नुलाई भने इन्टरमिडिएट जुन एजेन्टहरू राख्ने हिसाबले एलडिसी फन्डमा चाहिँ गाउँघरमा धेरै हिँड्ने गोरु गाईलाई चाहिँ रालो हालिदिने चलन छ नि, त्यो हालिदिया छ नि, त्यो चाहिँ सक्दाखेरि हामीले चाहिँ वी सुड डिस्करेज द्याट। तर के छ भने उनीहरूको पनि त आफ्ना किसिमका राखेको पैसा सदुपयोग गर्नलाई हाम्रो क्यापासिटी छैन भनेर उहाँहरूलाई राख्दिएन हो। एडिबीले चाहिँ त्यो लिनु परेको त के भने उनीहरूको दृष्टिकोणमा नेपाल सरकारको हिसाबले होल डाइरेक्ट फन्डिङ दियो भने म्यानेज हुन्छ कि हुँदैन अथवा एलडिसी कन्ट्रीले हुन्छ कि हुँदैन भन्ने हिसाबले हामी पनि क्यापासिटेड हुनुपर्छ। त्यही भएर मैले कहाँनिर कन्क्लुड गर्न चाहेँ भने हामीले एलडिसी फन्डको चाहिँ जुन हिजो सचिवले कृष्ण गेवाल सरले भनि पनि सक्नु भएको छ, हामीले एउटा बास्केट फन्ड बनाउने, राज्यले चाहिँ के अरे क्लाइमेट चेन्ज बास्केट फन्ड बनाउने, क्लाइमेट चेन्जसँग रिलेटेडको मिनिस्ट्री अफ फाइनेन्सले त्यसलाई लिड गरे पनि भयो। तर कस्तो भने मिनिस्ट्री अफ इन्भाइरोमेन्ट जसले चाहिँ क्लाइमेट चेन्जलाई हेरिरहेको छ, नेसनल प्लानिङ कमिसन छ, त्यसमा उहाँहरू सबैजना बसेर त्यो फन्डलाई हामीले चाहिँ इन्टरनेसनल ग्लोबल लेभलबाट ट्याप गर्ने, नट ओन्ली इन्टरनेसनल ग्लोबल लेभलमा। जस्तो उदाहरणलाई एउटा ब्रिज मैले भन्ने गरेको छु, एउटा ब्रिजको सर्टेन लेभलको टेम्परेचर हाई भएपछि के हुन्छ भने ब्रिज नै कोल्याप्स हुने पनि परिस्थिति छ नि। 2 डिग्री सेन्टिग्रेड टेम्परेचरमा तपाईँको बिटुमेनले धान्दैन भनेर डिजाइन भयो होला। मान्छे अब सडक विभाग, खानेपानी विभाग जसलाई राज्यले रेभिन्यू उठाएको पैसा दिइरहेको छ, उहाँहरूलाई पनि क्लाइमेट रेजिलियन्ट कुराहरू हामीले सिकाउनु पर्यो। सिकाइसकेपछि क्लाइमेट चेन्ज फन्डबाट त उहाँहरूले के गर्नुहुन्छ भने रेजिलियन्ट एक्टिभिटिज गर्नलाई दे विल टेक द फन्डिङ फ्रम क्लाइमेट फन्डबाट, र अनि अरू रेगुलर एक्टिभिटिजमा चाहिँ उहाँहरूले आफ्नो हिसाबले प्रोग्राम गरेर लिएर जानुहुन्छ। सर अलिकति हामीले यो बजेटमा सुरु गर्नलाई नेसनल प्लानिङ कमिसनले क्लाइमेट रेजिलियन्ट प्लानिङको टुल चाहिँ बनाइ पनि सकेको छ, एडिबीको सपोर्टमा किताबै निस्किएको छ, तर त्यो मन्त्रालय डिपार्टमेन्टले प्र्याक्टिस गर्नुपर्छ।
हजुर हजुर अहिले डाक्टर साहबको प्रेजेन्टेसनले यहाँ छलफल सुन्दाखेरि चाहिँ मलाई कस्तो लाग्यो भन्दाखेरि अब नेपाल सरकारले चाहिँ जुन त्यो उडिए जुन परम्परागत रूपमा आइरहेको छ, अब त्यही फन्ड नै एडिसनल फन्ड क्लाइमेटको लागि अथवा क्लाइमेट फन्डको आउनु पर्नेमा त्यसैलाई नै युज गरेर क्लाइमेटको नाममा चाहिँ दिइरहेको अवस्था देखियो। र अर्को कुरा चाहिँ नेपाल सरकारका डिफ्रेन्ट लाइन मिनिस्ट्रीहरूमा पनि सेन्सिटाइजेसन र एवेरनेस नभएको अवस्था देखियो। म एउटा सानो उदाहरण दिन चाहन्छु। एजेन्डा 21 को एउटा एकदम मेन प्रिन्सिपल पोल्युटर्स पे प्रिन्सिपल, त्यही प्रिन्सिपलमा आधार भएर चाहिँ हामीले पनि नेपालले पनि यो पोल्युसन ट्याक्स भनेर चाहिँ उठाएर, र त्यो पोल्युसन ट्याक्स अहिले 1 अरब पनि नागिसक्यो। तर वातावरण मन्त्रालयले त्यसलाई चाहिँ इन्भाइरोमेन्टल एक्टिभिटिजहरूमा युज गर्न अहिलेसम्म सकिरहेको अवस्था छैन, किनकि त्यो पैसा चाहिँ अर्थ मन्त्रालयमा गएर बसिरहेको छ केन्द्रीय राजस्व खातामा। यो अवस्था हाम्रो छ। यो अवस्थालाई चाहिँ हामीले चाहिँ एकदमै वास्तवमा यो चिरफार गर्नुपर्ने अवस्था छ, र चाहिँ अर्थ मन्त्रालयलाई कन्भिन्स गरेर ती चिजहरू चाहिँ हाम्रो क्लाइमेट एडप्टेसन लगाएर यी सबै कुराहरूमा चाहिँ गर्न सक्ने चाहिँ छ अवस्था छ, तर गर्न सकिरहेको चाहिँ छैन। रियलिटी
यस्तो छ कि हामीले अलिकति मेरो कस्तो लाग्यो भने म त अलिकति डेभलपमेन्टमा डिफ्रेन्ट सेक्टरमा काम गरेको मान्छे, बेसिकली म इन्जिनियरिङ साइडको मान्छे होइन। मैले 4 वर्ष जति 3.5 वर्ष योजना आयोगमा बस्दाखेरि कस्तो फिल गरेँ भने हामी वान मिनिस्ट्री र अर्को मिनिस्ट्रीको बिचमा एकदम लिङ्कअप कम होइन। र जस्तो मिनिस्ट्री अफ इन्भाइरोमेन्टले जसरी रूपमा यो इस्युलाई क्लाइमेटको फन्डिङको पोसिबिलिटिज देखाएको छ, पैसा नपाउने मन्त्रालय अर्को जस्तो खानेपानीको कुरो हुम्लामा छैन। उनीहरू चाहिँ पैसा 3 अरब दिँदा चाहियो भनेर आउँछन्, 1 अरबदेखि राज्यले दिन सक्दैन। तर उहाँहरूलाई हामीले देखाएर यो हिसाबले मिनिस्ट्री टु मिनिस्ट्री, इन्टर मिनिस्ट्री डिपार्टमेन्ट, जस्तो अहिले पिडिसिआरकै पैसामा मिनिस्ट्री अफ इन्भाइरोमेन्टले स्टेट गरेर त गरे पनि अलिकति पैसा त मिनिस्ट्री अफ फरेस्ट्रीमा पनि जाँदैछ, अर्कोमा जाँदैछ। अलिकति कल्चर चाहिँ हामीले विकास गर्न खोजेका छौँ। जस्तो स्टेरिङ कमिटीको चेयर चाहिँ सर्टेन लेभलको कुनै मन्त्रालयको सचिव हुनुहुन्छ, अब पैसा चाहिँ के भने इम्प्लिमेन्टेसन पार्टनर चाहिँ डिफ्रेन्ट डिपार्टमेन्ट हुनसक्छ। जस्तो उदाहरणलाई एडिबीको प्रोजेक्टमा अर्बनको जुन इम्प्रुभमेन्ट प्रोजेक्ट छ, मिनिस्ट्री अफ इन्भाइरोमेन्टलाई पनि पैसा दिएको छ त्यहाँ चाहिँ ट्रान्सपोर्टेसनको लागि, त्यसको स्टेरिङ कमिटीको चेयर चाहिँ गयो भने एमपिपिडब्ल्यूको चाहिँ सचिवजी हुनुहुन्छ। र अब इभन ट्राफिक पुलिसलाई पनि उनीहरूलाई ट्रेनिङ गर्नु पर्यो भनेर पैसा दिइएको छ। अलिकति कल्चर हामीले मोर इन्टिग्रेटेड रूपमा मोर लर्निङ सेयरिङ गर्ने लेभलमा हामी गएर चाहिँ डेभलप गर्न जरुरी छ। मलाई लाग्छ यो चाहिँ स्लोली त्यो लाइनमा चाहिँ गइरहेछ। तर बिकज अफ भेरी भनौँ न कस्तो हुँदो रहेछ भने सिनारियो हाम्रो कन्ट्रीको मेनली सिनारियो के छ भने मोर चेन्जिङ, फास्ट चेन्जिङमा पनि के भन्छ फ्रेमवर्क नै चेन्ज गर्ने सिनारियो भइसक्यो। पोलिटिकल फ्रेमवर्क चेन्ज भएन, चाइनामा भएको छैन, इन्डियामा भएको छैन। र पोलिटिकल फ्रेमवर्क हामीले जबसम्म सेटअप गर्न सक्दैनौँ यी चिजहरूले, जस्तो सचिवहरूले 6 महिनामा सरुवा भएको देखिरहेको छु म, 3 महिना 4 महिनामा छ, कुनै सचिव 1 वर्षमा 3 पटक सरुवा हुने स्थिति छ।
हामीले जिडिपीको 2% खर्च गरिरहेछौँ र प्रत्येक वर्षको चाहिँ 7% चाहिँ टोटल एक्सपेन्डिचरको चाहिँ क्लाइमेट रिलेटेड चाहिँ एक्टिभिटिजमा खर्च गरिरहेको अवस्था चाहिँ छ। तर अब त्यतिले नपुग्ला, छुट्टै कुरा हो। क्लाइमेटमा अझै बढी खर्च गर्नु पर्ला। धेरै सेक्टरल इस्युहरू छन्, केमा खर्च गरेको विषय क्लाइमेटमा गरेको हो भन्ने कुरा परिभाषा अलिअलि त हामीले गरेका छौँ होइन, त्यसलाई अझै अपडेट गर्न चाहिँ बाँकी नै छ।
अहिले चाहिँ हामी एक लेभलमा ओडिए फाइनेन्स र क्लाइमेट फाइनेन्सको चाहिँ डिफ्रेन्सिएट हुनुपर्छ भन्ने एक लेभलको राम्रो अन्डरस्ट्यान्डिङमा पुग्यौँ होइन। त्यो एकदमै सकारात्मक विषय हो र अगाडि भएको जुन छलफलहरू जस्तै पिपिसिआरको कुरा गर्दाखेरि अहिले आएर हामी के क्लियर भयो भने पिपिसिआरको पैसा चाहिँ कम्प्लिटली ओडिएको पैसा रहेछ डकुमेन्ट हेर्दाखेरि होइन, त्यो पनि देखियो होइन। त्यो लेभलमा नेगोसिएट गर्दाखेरि जुन सरको त्यो लेभलको एक्सपिरियन्समा हामी डोनरलाई कहिले सोध्छौँ यो पैसा के को पैसा हो भनेर, कि त्यो हाम्रो चलन हुँदैन सर?
यस्तो हुन्छ, मन्त्रीजीले भने एकदम ठिक छ। पिपिसिआरको पैसा मेरो विचारमा ओडिएको होइन, मैले अहिले पनि क्लियर गर्न चाहेँ एकदम। तर एउटा कुरो कस्तो हुन्छ मन्त्रीजी भने मेरो विचारमा प्रोजेक्ट डिजाइनमा फेज हुँदो रहेछ कि, जस्तो मैले पनि योजना आयोगमा गइसकेपछि त्यो बल्ल बुझ्ने मौका पाएँ। पहिला सुरुमा टिए टिम भन्छ। टिए टिम चाहिँ नर्मली हाम्रो प्र्याक्टिस के छ भने यदि कम्प्लिकेटेड टिए छैन भने सम्बन्धित मन्त्रालयको श्रीमान सचिवको अध्यक्षतामा हामीले बनाउने चलन छ। त्यसलाई चाहिँ स्टेप गर्ने, गाइड गर्ने, किनभने पोलिसी रिफ्लेक्सन चाहिँ नेसनल प्लानिङ कमिसनबाट आउँछ, तर त्यसलाई चाहिँ अलिकति गाइड गर्ने कुरो चाहिँ नेसनल प्लानिङ कमिसनले सम्बन्धित मन्त्रालयको श्रीमान सचिवको अध्यक्षतामा भएको कमिटीलाई गर्छ र त्यहाँ चाहिँ टिए पार्टमा काम गर्दाखेरि धेरै कुरो छिनाफाना गर्नुपर्ने हुँदो रहेछ। जस्तो कन्सल्ट्यान्ट लाग्यो, उसले त के भने तिमीले 7 दिनमा फिडब्याक देऊ भनेको छ, 15 दिनमा देऊ भनेको छ। अब योजना आयोगमा पनि डकुमेन्ट आयो, योजना आयोगमा पनि पढ्ने मान्छेहरू हुनु पऱ्यो त्यहाँ। मैले यसलाई अन्यथा यसलाई डन्ट टेक इट अदरवाइज पढ्नु पऱ्यो डकुमेन्ट। जस्तो नेसनल प्लानिङ कमिसनमा क्लाइमेट चेन्ज पोलिसीको डकुमेन्ट चाहिँ उहाँहरूले फिडब्याक माग्नुभयो, फर इक्जाम्पल मिनिस्ट्री अफ इन्भाइरोमेन्टले पढेर त्यहाँ चाहिँ के भने त्यहाँ एक्सपर्टिज हुनु पऱ्यो, उसले पनि यो कुरोमा कन्ट्रिब्युसन गर्नु पऱ्यो। जस्तो उदाहरण लागि म त्यहाँ भएको बेला मैले अलिकति क्लाइमेट चेन्ज र इन्भाइरोमेन्ट कुरोमा कन्ट्रिब्युट गर्न सक्ने भए ट्रेड एन्ड कमर्सको कुरो भयो भने मैले त विज्ञता फेरि कम छ। आई मेन कन्ट्रिब्युटिङ इन द्याट डिरेक्सन। एउटा कुरो चाहिँ मन्त्रीजीले भन्नुभएको कुरो के हो भने हामीले सुरुमा प्रोजेक्ट डिजाइन फेजदेखि नै यी कुराहरूलाई हामीले क्ल्यारिटी भएर जानुपर्ने। अझ त के छ भने अहिले जुन छलफल गर्न खोजिएको ओडिएको कुरोमा अनि त्यसपछि गएर चाहिँ इभन क्लाइमेट फाइनेन्सको कुरोमा त हामी नेगोसिएसन टेबलदेखि जब क्लियर भएर जान्छौँ नि भने यी कुराहरू क्ल्यारिटी हुन्छन्। र अर्को कुरो के भने डोनरहरूसँग, डेभलपमेन्ट पार्टनरहरूसँग हामीले यो कुरोमा तिमीले गरेको भएन, यो प्रायोरिटी एरिया हो, यसरी जाऊ, यहाँनिर लैजानुपर्छ प्रोजेक्ट, यसरी चाहिँ यो हाम्रो इन्ट्रेस्टमा, राज्यको इन्ट्रेस्टमा यसरी जानुपर्छ भन्ने कुराहरू हुन्छन्। तर सबै तपाईँले भने चाहिँ गरेर स्टेयर नभइरहेको हुनुपर्छ। हस्, मैले यसलाई कन्क्लुड गरेँ। मैले कन्क्लुड गर्दाखेरि मैले एउटा मात्रै कुरा के जोडेर कन्क्लुड गर्छु चौलागाईजीलाई भन्छु भने मेरो लर्निङ कस्तो छ भने जिडिपी ग्रोथ रेट गर्ने कुरो र विकास चाहिँ एकदम सम्भव छ। जस्तो इकोनोमी र अनस्टेबल पोलिटिक्स भनेको एकदम इन्टररिलेटेड कुरो हुँदो रहेछ कि। जस्तो अमेरिकाको स्टेबल पोलिटिक्स छ, त्यहाँ इकोनोमी पनि स्टेबल छ कि समहाउ। चाइनाको स्टेबल पोलिटिक्स छ, इकोनोमी पनि के छ भने मोर स्टेबल छ। इन्डियाको मैले अहिले भने इन्डियाको तपाईँको चाहे गान्धीको बेलादेखिको चाहिँ तपाईँका ब्रोडर फ्रेमवर्कमा बनेका चाहिँ जुन फ्रेमवर्क छ इट इज नट चेन्जिङ। त्यसले गर्दा के छ भने ग्रेजुअल्ली उनीहरूले आफूलाई चाहिँ अगाडि लिएर गइरहेछन्। त्यसो भएर जिडिपीको ग्रोथ रेटको कुरा, विकासको कुरा भनेको कुरो इट इज भेरी रिलेटेड टु द पोलिटिक्स। हाम्रो चाहिँ के भयो भने 7 सालबाट 17 सालसम्म एउटा सिनारियो, 17 सालबाट 36 साल एउटा अलिकति गर्ल्याङ गुरुङ, फेरि अर्को 36 सालबाट चाहिँ 46 सालको एउटा सिनारियो, 46 सालदेखि 62 सालसम्म अर्को सिनारियो। र मलाई लाग्छ फ्रेमवर्क पोलिटिक्सले आकार ग्रहण गर्यो भने अरूले गरेको काम आई थिङ्क वी क्यान डु भेरी फास्ट। थ्याङ्क यू।
It's a bit difficult to understand how the European Union's position on this. Clearly they're sort of trying to link this date to the discussions on the Copenhagen Accord, the 2020 outcomes of that came out of Cancun. They also suggest that for their industry to have certainty in investment, they need a longer commitment period than 5 years. Our position is that the current pledges that have been put forward by the industrialised countries are so low that we do not want to be locked in for more than 5 years of having a low targets being set. So that's why we would like to have a short commitment period of 5 years, so that we're not locked in till 2020 to a low ambition. And this relates back to this ambition gap issue. So that's why we've opted for the short commitment period. And it's consistent with the first commitment period. It's a consistent approach to it. And so we like to have this sort of regular review mechanism. For the ones who don't have a second commitment period, like Canada, who look like they're not going to reach their first commitment period target, well, nothing happens. You know, they just don't continue with the Kyoto Protocol. The next thing is with this assigned amount units. This is the allocation for each country that sets a target. They calculate that target based on tonnes of CO2 equivalent, and that's called an assigned amount unit. So we were saying that Russian Federation have reduced their emissions well below their target, so they've got an excess of these assigned amount units. And there are, environmental integrity consequences as a result of that. But certainly, there's going to be resistance, I think, by the major developing countries as to whether or not the CDM. Maybe we won't decide that rule. The CDM will continue, but because the European Union are the principal countries who are going to have the second commitment period, and they've already got a directive saying it's only going to be for LDCs, there's going to be no market or no other country buying up CDM credits because they're not party to a second commitment period. We'll see how that plays out. Certainly Australia has talked about an emissions trading scheme. They have a carbon tax now. They're talking about an emissions trading scheme, and they've indicated they want to buy 50% of their credits offshore. So they may be, if they go into a second commitment period, they may be interested in buying up CDMs.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit confused. Those countries, to them that they will remain the party of Kyoto Protocol and not support the second commitment?
Yes, that's possible. And in fact, countries can continue to be party to the Kyoto Protocol and not support a second commitment period.
So then they will be the partial parties of Kyoto Protocol.
So they can come in and sit in the meetings, but they won't be able to do much, really. They can't, they haven't got a target, and so they'll just be sitting there sort of watching the discussions, I guess.
Only
They will not
observation
participate,
status only.
Well, no, they've got full voting status, so they can vote on the rules. And this is what we're seeing currently with Japan, Canada and the Russian Federation talking about the rules for the next commitment period. Like I was saying, is this a hypothetical discussion you're having with us? Because they're trying to change the rules for the second commitment period, even though they're not going to be a party to the second commitment period. But currently they're legally allowed to do that because we haven't got a second commitment period. But those countries will continue to be parties to the Kyoto Protocol, though I think Canada has indicated they're going to formally withdraw from the Kyoto Protocol, which they can do. But I think Japan and Russian Federation said they'll continue to be parties to the Kyoto Protocol, but they won't be party to a second commitment period. So where does that leave them? Not doing much, I guess.
What will be the legal implication of that then?
Well, it only means that they can sit in meetings of the COPMOP and put in discussions, I guess, but I can't see what role they'd be wanting to play, unless Japan pushes for some rule about the CDM or something like that.
But what I believe is whatever the mechanism will come in the future, it will be those emerging or those developing countries who will be getting access of this. We had a discussion with the few private sectors in India, and what they believe is that they see CDM as one of the outdated mechanism. They have been rigorously now discussing about the mechanism in NAMA, the upcoming things overall. So, and it's still we are having a more discussion on CDM. So I guess whatever the mechanism that will come in future, it will be again those countries. So that issue could be one of the serious things that need to be discussed.
Yes. So this is part of the discussion, but the complication with that is that this is the alternative to the Kyoto Protocol and the Clean Development Mechanism is some sort of nationally appropriate mitigation actions that generate credit through some sort of carbon market that are traded internationally, like the CDM, but at a bigger scale. Generally, that's the vision of some countries. So it's CDM offsets, but it's at a bigger scale. The complication with that is that we've now agreed that this new legally binding agreement is not going to happen until 2015 and will not enter into force to 2020. So this sort of NAMA model is unlikely to be legally enter into force until at least 2020. That system is not going to happen till then. And this is the debate we have with RED as well. That, you know, a market mechanism under RED is not likely to happen until we've got a complete new legally binding agreement, and that's not going to happen until 2015, and it's not going to enter into force till 2020. So that's part of the complications we've got on that issue as well. But, we'll continue the session on, and then the final session for the afternoon will be a group session where we'll get you to break up into different groups to discuss the different negotiation processes. So we'll have an LCA group, we'll have a Kyoto Protocol group, a Durban Platform group, and what we'll get you to do is identify the key issues that you think are important for Nepal in the coming Doha meeting, and we'll get you to discuss those issues and then present back. So you've got to pay attention to what I have to say because it relates to your discussions. So where we ended up with the RED discussion was where we finished off. There are a couple more key elements of the Bali Action Plan that then translated into the LCA. And under the adaptation discussion is what is there anything else that needs to be developed under the LCA agenda on adaptation? Remembering we now have an adaptation committee. We already have the adaptation fund established under the Kyoto Protocol. Are there any other arrangements that need to be considered? We've now got a program for developing national adaptation plans. In addition to what LDCs already have, developing national adaptation programs of action. So these are all sort of actions that have flowed out of the LCA process, and are new funding arrangements necessary. So one of the crucial things to think about is this sort of promised funding that comes under the Global Climate Fund and the promised $30 billion that came out of the Cancun Agreement. Supposedly half of that is supposed to go to adaptation. So how's that going to work? And you have to think about, is there going to be a new type of adaptation fund, or will there be money put through the current adaptation fund? So there's the thing to think about. What is going to happen about loss and damage? This is a new initiative that was brought forward by small island states to deal with essentially insurance to provide support to countries once they've suffered the impacts of climate change or severe weather events. So this is sort of modelled on a few models. The Caribbean already have a Caribbean catastrophe insurance mechanism. And how that works is that it's based on some threshold. So if a country experiences wind speeds over a certain speed and damage occurs, they get an insurance payout. So the threshold is based on some sort of measure or indicator of damage. And so, you know, in the situation of the Pacific, we can't afford even that sort of scheme. We do not have the pool of funding to support that sort of insurance arrangement. There's just not that money. So what we're looking at is some sort of international mechanism to provide support for countries that suffer the impacts of climate change. So countries that have severe flooding events or other sort of climate-related events and who have to rebuild after those things, can we develop some sort of international fund? Or if countries suffer a major drought and crops die, is there a special funding mechanism for that? So this is currently a discussion. There hasn't been a lot of discussion about this. Likely in Doha, will agree on a work program to progress this issue. Are there special protection measures that you think should be incorporated in some sort of international arrangement? So that's just something to think about. That was a key core element of the LCA program. Where will the funding come from? We've now got a Green Climate Fund established. Where's the money going to come from that? Is this the 30 billion attached to activities? And I imagine the crucial issue, the crucial political issue, will there be a work program established for the Durban platform? Or will it be blocked by discussions saying we haven't concluded the work of the LCA? So if we haven't concluded work of the LCA, how can we be developing a work program under that? And then we go into a discussion about the elements of a work program. So it's Groundhog Day for those who are into American movies, because we're just going through the same discussion we had with the LCA. Everybody will throw up every sort of item that's ever possible, and we'll have a large document, a huge document, and we'll debate about it, for the next 5 years. So clearly we have to be very strategic on how we put work into the Durban platform. And should there be milestones to be achieved? Should there be progress measured in each year of work that's been concluded under the Durban platform? So that will certainly be discussed. What is the time frame for the work? Is it fits in with this 2015 outcomes, or will there be a pressure to compress the time frame to sort of conclude work on legal? And procedurally, how will the work proceed? Workshops, roundtables, high-level events. Now, if you look at the discussions that occurred in Bangkok, basically some of the key developed countries, particularly the United States, says we don't need milestones, we don't need a time frame for work, let's just continue with a process of workshops, roundtables, and we don't need high-level events. So they're sort of pushing this sort of softly, go slowly approach. Whereas European Union, IOSIS and LDCs are sort of saying let's have a clearly defined work program, a time frame for action. So this will be quite an intense discussion within this vision discussion. Does that make sense to people? These are very, for people who haven't been involved in the climate change negotiations, these look like very tedious procedural discussions. And they are tedious procedural discussions, but they're very necessary in the political outcomes. By setting timeframes and work and conclusions, you guarantee an outcome. If you don't do that, then the discussions can go on and on and on. Like we've seen in the LCA process, without any sort of conclusion of it. So this is quite an important discussion. Capabilities, meaning some countries are able to do more than others because of their economic circumstance. And this is a core principle of the convention that's laid down in the convention. CBDR, you'll hear in the discussion, CBDR. However, there is a discussion to try and undermine the CBDR principle. And certainly some of the developed countries want to say this no longer applies. That was written in '92, when the convention was written in '92. We're now in 2012, and the world is a lot different to what we were in '92. Some countries have developed a lot quicker, so the principle of CBDR does not apply anymore. And that's matched against these words.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I understand common.
Yes.
Also differentiated responsibilities related to the historical responsibilities.
Yes.
What's about the future? Because in the future, also the responsibilities are not the same. Different country will have the different responsibilities. That
Yes.
part is covered by what?
Well, this is part of the key debate. Are the differentiated responsibilities that we were aware of in '92 the same as the differentiated responsibilities we have now? Have we seen some developing countries develop and become basically developed countries? You know, where, for instance, if I can be undiplomatic and talk about Singapore, you know, where do they fit in this situation now? Are they the same as other major developed countries? And we've seen some developed countries' economies collapse. You know, so their situation, some of the Eastern European countries have poorer economies than some developing countries, and they're saying, should we be, you know, seeing the world like we saw it in '92 as it is now? And so that's where there's this debate about what does this mean, and it flows out into these words: broad participation applicable to all. So it's saying, and this is principally within the discussion of mitigation. This principle saying everybody's got to do something, and are we undermining this differentiated responsibility by using that term? So these two terms are being played off against each other. The Cartagena group uses this terminology. So rather than CBDR. So you've got to be aware of that. Leadership by developed countries. So this is wording being that was brought forward by the LDCs in the discussion. So again, saying this differentiated responsibilities should continue to apply. Looking at historical emissions, developed countries should take the lead. The US is saying no divide between countries. So they're completely changed this whole concept of common but differentiated responsibilities. And that's because they see that graph that I showed earlier saying China's emissions are the same as the US, so there shouldn't be any difference between what China does and what the US does. So that's how they interpret those words. Reflect national circumstances. Japan brought that up because they're now in serious issues with their energy production, so they no longer want to be sort of seen as part of just a group of Annex I countries. Bolivia came up with equity, flexible, meaning the approaches, science-based, climate effective is the language that LDCs use, and transparency. But you can see all these words and principles are really relating to mitigation. And so we've got to make sure that within this vision that we have words that sort of apply to adaptation as well. Otherwise the Durban platform will just become a mitigation agreement. So that this is something to be very careful about in those words. But these are the words that are being used in this sort of discussion of principles. And this is this sort of no divide between countries versus differentiated responsibilities is a major debate that's going on this issue. So what is the legal form of the outcome? We had a bit of discussion about this. Is it going to be a protocol at the end? Or will it be this pledge and review system, which is what the US put forward as the Copenhagen Accord and the Cancun Agreement? You just put up a pledge, it's got words that sort of put complications in their pledge, and we just review that outcome. And it doesn't have to be in a legally binding agreement. And what other legal options are possible? Action on mitigation. Because we're the most vulnerable, we need to have more action on mitigation. But it shouldn't be just a mitigation agreement. Because as we've seen, a lot of the adaptation issues are just being put aside into the subsidiary bodies. how will financing be addressed? And that's a crucial part of the discussion, and we weighed up against that. And will there be verification of financing? In that paragraph on 1B2 of the Bali Action Plan, it talks about nationally appropriate mitigation actions that are measurable, supported by finance that is measurable, reportable and verifiable. It took the US until 4 p.m. on the Saturday of the COP to agree that the comma created sufficient ambiguity that they can live with 1B2 text. So there's this measurement. It says nationally appropriate mitigation actions that are measured, reported and verified, and finance that are measured, reported and verified. So does that mean it's just the nationally appropriate mitigation actions that are measured, reported and verified, or does it mean that finance also to support the NAMAs has to be measured, reported and verified? And that's the position of developing countries, saying, yes, if we're going to take mitigation action, we need finance that's guaranteed and has to be measured, reported and verified. So that it's not these hollow promises that come out. So we've got to think up a mechanism to ensure that the finance is measured, reported and verified. So that's part of the discussion in this Durban platform. So, did I go backwards? 1 minute. Will there, within the discussion in the legal form, will there be specific commitments? Will there be targets like we see in the Kyoto Protocol? And will these targets be just for developed countries, or will NAMAs be seen as a target with a legally binding consequence? So that's part of the discussion. Does that make sense to people? So what we're likely to see, I mean, part of the debate was, like we see with the Kyoto Protocol, the developed countries, the industrialised countries will set a target, a national target for their emissions reduction. And then for developing countries, they can establish NAMAs, but they will be put into a legally binding agreement. So not just a sort of pledge, but they will commit to taking actions, could be just in a sector or whatever, but it does mean that there is a target. And so if they do set a target under a legal binding agreement, can they trade? If they do better than their target, can they enter into emissions trading like we already have under the Kyoto Protocol? So will developing countries be able to enter into emissions trading schemes, be excluded from the mechanism? And we've seen that. I think one of the I think it was Croatia. I think were their national inventories. They had problems with national inventories. They had to appear before the compliance committee, and they were told that their recording was not accurate enough, and therefore they weren't eligible to use the mechanisms. I think it was Croatia. I hope I'm not bad-mouthing the wrong country. And will there be a compliance system like we have under the Kyoto Protocol, like I just explained, where countries have to, are answerable to a compliance committee? So how will the obligations on parties be treated? And we've got these new words that have come up in the debate. So we've got some new buzzwords. So Norway calls it dynamic differentiation. What's dynamic differentiation? I presume they're suggesting that we have differentiate between developed and developing countries depending on their economic circumstances as it changes. That the different responsibilities between developed and developing countries change as their economic circumstances change.
We should not be sidelined in this.
Yes. The current wording, I think, on NAMAs says developing countries shall undertake NAMAs and LDCs should do it if they want to. But I think the LDC's position has traditionally been that we support NAMAs, as actions that are developing by developing countries. And I think we have to see that developing countries have to take a greater effort to reduce their emissions. We can no longer see it just as an industrialised country. That developing countries, if we're going to get to this trajectory of 2 degrees or 1.5 degrees, we need a greater effort by developing countries. So we support NAMAs as a process, and I think I support them being incorporated within a legally binding outcome.
Can LDCs have a sufficient ground to have a bargaining position if, for instance, their development initiative is inherently, by inherent nature, is a mitigating action?
Yeah, but even though our emissions are low and really NAMAs don't apply to us, we're still a large group of countries within the debate. So, the rest of the world can't just sort of move forward without taking on board our perspective. And we have been forming this sort of a coalition with the African group and AOSIS countries. So that's a large proportion of the countries within this climate change agenda with a common perspective. And that can't be ignored. Even though our emissions are low, our perspective on what the sort of mitigation outcomes cannot be ignored. I mean, we do often see this as a sort of debate between the US and China, or with the EU on the side, but nevertheless, it's part of a UN agreement, and therefore all countries' positions have to be
पछाडि चाहिँ नि त्यसलाई चाहिँ नि बनाउनु पर्ला नि भन्ने किसिमको चाहिँ नि एउटा कुरा त्यहाँ आएको र यो चाहिँ त्यहाँ एलडिसीले पनि सपोर्ट गरेको